Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. So there's many topics that I want to talk about. So it's going to be miscellaneous topics today. Some deal with current events, some dealing with social issues, political issues, etc., and social economic. So as you can see, the titles I'm going to be discussing about rent inflation and eviction, the CPS worker in Houston, Texas, and how she got fired. And also, I'm going to be talking about this young thug hearing bond. Okay. But I want to thank everybody who have been subscribing to my channel, liking my channel, sharing my channel, and watching my videos, etc. Thank you for your support. That really means a lot to me. I really want to thank you guys so much. So I think we need to have a conversation about rent inflation and eviction, because many of us who are in the working class and lower class community, we are really facing the concept of rent inflation and possible eviction. Right where I'm at in Georgia, in DeKalb County, there is a current issue where over 200 residents in an apartment complex are being forced out of their homes. Yes, they're being evicted for no apparent reason. So it's not like they not paying their rent. It's just the management of that property want to get rid of them so they can renovate the property or whatever they want to do. So now it leaves these residents in a predicament where they not able to move elsewhere. And many of them cannot get Section 8 housing. So they're in a situation where am I going to go? Where am I going to sleep? How am I going to provide a roof over my head? Or how am I going to provide a place for my family? So it's many things that comes about. It's a lot of questions that takes place. And many of us work 9 to 5 jobs where we cannot afford to move because the rent is absolutely high in certain areas. Well, in most areas. And the areas that you look at, you'll wonder, well, why is rent costing this much money? And the demographic is not as all of that for it to be so much. But that's the current situation right now. And it's not just in Georgia, but it's nationwide. So now protesters are calling on President Biden to do something about this whole thing regarding to the rent issue, to bring about a decrease on it, so where it can become affordable for people who making minimum wage, because a lot of people are not making livable wages to be able to pay the high rents. And places like Georgia, there is no cap on rent. So that means that property management or whoever the owner of the property is or your landlord can charge you whatever they want to charge you. They can go up on your rent. And that's really a messed up situation. So I just want to go ahead and show you guys this article. And I may play a video. So let's go ahead and let's look at this article real fast. It says, record rent increases, low wages are driving an eviction crisis, U.S. Senate panel told. And this came out August the 3rd of 2022. And it says, witnesses in a Tuesday hearing detailed to a U.S. Senate committee how investors and stagnant wages are driving an eviction housing crisis across the U.S. The chair of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, said that families are being priced out of buying homes, and rising rents means that tenants are just one illness or job loss or car repair away from eviction. More and more investors are buying up single-family homes that first-time buyers usually buy, and renting them out at a sky-high rates. Brown, a Democrat, said in his opening statement, 28% of homes sold at the beginning of this year went to investors. One of the witnesses was Matthew Desmond, a sociology professor at Princeton University and director of the Eviction Lab, the only research team in the country dedicated to understanding the causes and consequences of housing instability in America. Desmond said that regions across the country have experienced a huge surge in rents. Since 2000, median rent has increased by 112% in the Midwest and 135% in the South, 189% in the Northeast, and 192% in the West, he said. Last year, rents increased faster than they ever have on record, he said, adding that across the nation, the median rent increased 17% in 1 year. But some cities saw double that, he said, such as 40% in Portland, Oregon, 35% in Newark, New Jersey, 30% in Orlando, Florida, and 29% in Cincinnati, Ohio. When the cost of housing rises 15, 25, and 30%, what can family do? Desmond said. They can't relocate to affordable housing because they often are already living in the cheapest apartments available. All they can do is cut back on other necessities, including healthcare, educational enrichments, and food. All right. Then it goes down here to talk about Biden blamed. The ranking Republican on the committee, Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, blamed the Biden administration for inflation and said that the government, and especially this administration, have often been the problem, not the solution when it comes to housing. Democrats' wasteful spending, growth killing regulation, and excessively accommodative monetary policy are exactly what led to 40-year high inflation and contracted our economy, he said in his opening statement. Tommy, as one of the witnesses, Darren Dunn, who is the managing partner of Atlantica Properties in Atlanta, Georgia, if government action that raises costs to landlords get passed on to tenants. Generally, that is the case, Dunn said. Those costs have to be passed on because there's such relatively small margins. Senator John Tester, a Montana Democrat, said that people in his state are also having trouble finding affordable housing. The price points have gotten too high, he said, adding that the median home sale price has increased about 40% in his state in the last year. This is pushing more people from potential home ownership to looking for homes to rent, he said. He asked one of the witnesses, Laura Brunner, the CEO and president of the Port of Greater Cincinnati Development Authority, what can happen to communities where home ownership is out of reach. There is a profound impact on local families when home ownership opportunities are taken away from them, she said. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to play a video clip real fast. Okay? I want to play a video clip that deals with this whole housing issue that touches on the subject. So, ladies and gentlemen, this video come from democracynow.org. Okay. So as we watch democracynow.org, they talk about how the rent crisis is taking place. So I'm only going to play like maybe 4 minutes of the video. All right. So please check this video out. Watch this.
Now, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Housing advocates are calling on the Biden administration to address the soaring cost of rent with the same level of dedication he's shown to reducing gas prices. This comes as a new report shows evictions are spiking as rental protections disappear. A coalition of hundreds of tenant unions and housing activists call the situation a national emergency as rental costs rise at the fastest pace in 3 decades. This is Ani Thompson, an organizer with Faith in the Valley in Stockton, California, who's in Washington, D.C. this week as a tenant delegate with the Homes Guarantee Campaign. He spoke to Democracy Now! After meeting with Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Sandra Thompson.
I experienced my rent going from $1,500 to $1,700 in 1 year. And the thing is that with paying $1,500, that was already high, but to hike it up from $1,500 to $1,700, I felt like was ridiculous. When it comes to a 10% rent hike, like it actually, like I said, it does have a big difference, or it does mean a big difference for a lot of folks in California. Like in my own personal situation, that 10% rent hike meant a $200 difference in my rent. And that within itself meant that I was not able to, fix my car when it needed maintenance due to having to forfeit that $200 every month to rent. And then it also meant, getting in a cycle of of overdrafting my account and inquiring fees and then paying it off when I got paid. But then because I paid that money to those fees, now I have to overdraft my account again so that I can cover my bills. And then I have the fees again, and then I have to pay it off when I get paid again. And then it's just this vicious cycle that starts up, and it almost seems like it has no end. I think that it's no brainer that rent prices are definitely tied to inflation, right? And that for them to not include it is kind of like disheartening. But that this housing crisis issue, is not going to go anywhere, and that they cannot continue to ignore it. And further prolonging addressing it is only going to make it worse for American citizens.
That's tenant delegate Zani Thompson, part of the Homes Guarantee campaign underway now in Washington, D.C. For now, we stay in D.C. to speak with Tara Raghuveer, director of KC Tenants, a grassroots tenant-led organization based in Kansas City. She's also the Homes Guarantee campaign director at People's Action. Tara, welcome back to Democracy Now! Explain why you're in D.C. and the level of pressure on people who are renting and rents increasing in a way we haven't seen in like 30 years.
Thank you so much for having me back, Amy. We're in DC because the rent is too damn high. You heard Zani speak to this, but people across the country are being squeezed at the gas pump, at the grocery store. But the biggest expense for most American households is their cost of their housing. It's their rent. And rents are up 6.3% in the latest inflation figures. This is the biggest increase in rents in 35 years. Median rent across the country is over $2,000 for the first time ever. And people simply can't afford it. This rent inflation crisis is really sparing no one and no place. So we're in DC with tenants like Zani, a delegation of tenants who have been impacted by these rent hikes, to push the president to do everything in his legal authority to regulate the rent now.
And can you explain about pandemic protections being rolled back and how that affects people?
So the eviction rates are back up to pre-pandemic levels, but really there's no rate of eviction that should be acceptable. We can't celebrate lower than normal rates and we can't celebrate returning back to normal. What we believe is every eviction is an act of violence. And what the administration did during the pandemic to alleviate the risk of eviction or provide some relief to tenants was really a bailout to landlords. There was billions and billions of dollars of federal assistance put out in the form of rental assistance that put the burden on tenants to apply, but they didn't get to keep that check, right? They had to turn that check over to their landlord. The abomination in all of this is that none of that public money came with strings attached, right? None of that actually built in any structural shift of power from landlords to tenants. So today, not only do we see evictions returning back to pre-pandemic levels, we also see a different type of eviction crisis playing out outside of the courtrooms as people simply can't afford their rent. See, when a landlord increases the rent beyond a place where a tenant can afford it, they don't have the choice to just scrape together another $200 and try to make it work. Often that is tantamount to an eviction, and people are losing their homes because their rent is increasing or their lease is not getting renewed.
And in just a moment, we're going to speak with one of the leaders of the movement to help the unhoused in Los Angeles and the growing tension there. But if you can talk about, I mean, we know the rents that are going up in coastal cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, here in New York City. You're from Kansas City. Talk about it all over.
In Kansas City, the rent is up 7.5%. City Hall defines affordable as $1,200 for a one-bedroom apartment, and that's based on an area median income of $86,000. I don't know a single person in Kansas City who's making $86,000 or who can afford a $1,200 apartment. So people are sent into the cycles that Zani described, where they're paying extra in their rent and they're having to cut back on other bills like their medication or their groceries. Unlike something like gas,
You heard it. You heard it, right? So eviction is like a violent crime. And where she at in Kansas City, the affordable rent is $1,200. $1,200. Now, an average person cannot pay $1,200 a month, let alone they're struggling to even pay $800 a month on rent. And see, this is the system way of coming back for landlords. And now the next thing I'm about to show y'all ties into all of this. So you and I grew up. We know about this, right? We all used to sit at the dinner table. I'm about to show you guys this. There was a reason why when you was growing up, you played this game. This game right here. This game called Monopoly. Anybody familiar with that? I know I'm familiar with it because when I was growing up, we played this game. Now, at that time, I had no understanding of it because it was just a game, and if you win, you win. But you know what? It took a long time to win that game. It really did. You had to roll the dice, and then you had to wait however many times that dice show up, whatever number it shows up on that dice, that's how many times you go, right? And if you land on the property, you pay for the property, you purchase that property, right? And you put a little house or a little hotel, one of those little items on top of the property. Because if somebody land on that property, right, they would have had to owe you some money. And then if you go into if you hit the part where it says jail, you had to sit there and wait. You had to keep rolling the dice until you get the double. And when you got a double, then you was able to get out of jail, or you had to get out of jail free card. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason why this game is called Monopoly. All right, for those of us that don't know what Monopoly is, let me pull up the definition, because this was a lesson for us. It was educational. It was teaching us something. Although it was a game, but it's teaching you how capitalism work. That this is the game of capitalism. Let me show you something. Now let's get to the definition of what monopoly is from the economic standpoint. So monopoly, as described by Ivan Fisher, is a market with the absence of competition, creating a situation where a specific person or enterprise is the only supplier of a particular thing. This contrasts with a monopsony, which relates to a single entity control of a market to purchase a good or service with the oligopoly or duopoly, which consists of a few sellers dominating a market. Monopolies are thus characterized by a lack of economic competition to produce a good or service, a lack of viable substitute goods, and the possibility of a high monopoly price well above the seller's marginal cost that leads to a high monopoly profit. The verb monopolize refers to the process by which a company gains the ability to raise prices or excludes competitors. In economics, a monopoly is a single seller. In law, a monopoly is a business entity that has a significant market power, that is the power to charge overly high prices, which is associated with a decrease in social surplus. Although monopolies may be big businesses, size is not a characteristic of a monopoly. A small business may still have the power to raise prices in a small industry for market. So the reason why I'm saying this goes into the concept of housing, people running hotel businesses or apartment condominiums, all these different commercial real estates, right? Or private real estates. So when you have, let's say, for example, apartment complex, when you have property managements come in, right? And there is new owners, what they tend to do is buy out those properties. Why? Because the previous owners could not keep up with the maintenance of that property, or because they was getting too much fines for those properties, or they just didn't think that the property, they wasn't making profit, or they weren't generating revenue from the complex. So what they do is they sell it over to the next company, right? So you got an investor come in, and that investor got their own property management going on. And that management not only runs that particular property, but runs multiple properties. And it may not be in the same state, but in multiple states. So in this case, in order for them to make profit, do maintenance work or renovation, they have to go up on rent because they're saving their pockets. So they have to go up on rent just so they can generate the profits and just so they can do the work that needs to be done. However, it hurt the people that's renting those properties because that's all they could afford. That's all their income could allow them to pay for. So now when they see there's an increase on rent, like the lady said, the increase on rent where she was able 6.5%. And the guy said his rent was about 7% increase. So when you have an increase that has 6.5% to about 10% increase, that affects your pocket. So now you're put in a predicament where, what can I do here? What do I need to cut back on? I got to cut back on medical insurance. I may need to cut back on trying to get my car fixed. I need to come up with an arrangement of how to pay my bills, my utility bills, just so I could be able to afford the rent. And it shouldn't be that way. And this is why I ask, how can, especially people of color, knowing what we have gone through, what we have dealing with the redlining, the gentrification, and all, how can't you love a system like capitalism? How can't you love a system that is so good at monopolizing its people? How can't you love a system like this? I ask a question like that. So people think about, oh, I make money, it's free marketing, private ownership, you can generate wealth, etc., etc. But do you think about the effects behind it? Do you think about how it can affect those around you? And think about this. There's some so-called financial gurus out there that talk about ways of how to get people to make profit and how they could generate income, etc., right? But they don't really tell the necessary truth. I know this because I have been to one of the seminars before, and I've sat back and I have listened. And you could tell when somebody's lying when they say they done made XYZ amount of money, right? Just by joining the program. You couldn't have. You couldn't have. And then they get busted for scamming. But what they don't do is they don't tell you the effects of the pros and cons to that. They don't let you know about how the inflation can affect people's way of living. They don't talk about livable wages. They don't discuss that they try to downplay people who have a 9-to-5 job and say, well, you working this job and you're not making no wealth. You're not doing this thing other. You need to join this. You need to join this team because you'll be able to make some money within 3 or 4 months. You'll be able to see an increase. You'll be able to see your check be around $7,000 or $8,000. But they don't tell you that there's a possibility that you may not make that much money. They don't tell you that, especially with the African American family, it would take us over 223 years to catch up with the income of those of our white counterparts collectively. Because we represent a majority of those who are in the working class and lower class community. We represent a majority of those who are in the working class and lower class community. I seen a documentary the other day about the Black elite, right? The Black elite only represent 3% of the Black population. 3%. Whereas the rest is either poor or working class. And on top of that, we don't have access to capital. We don't have access because we don't have generational wealth as a people in this country. So regardless if you are an African American whose ancestors was a descendant of slaves here, right? Or you are an African American whose family were immigrants for other countries, or let's say you was a third generation of immigrant that was born here in America, or you come from a fourth generation of immigrant that was born and raised here in America. Regardless of that situation, as long as you Black in America, you don't come from generational wealth. You don't have no capital. You ain't got no kind of savings on that level. So you're going to have a difficult time to gain loans. And then when you do get loans, the interest is going to be high because of the demographic area and because of who you are. Because they have this preconceived notion that if we get loans, we're not going to pay it back. So they're going to charge us more on interest. And again, there's other minority groups out there that's affected besides us. But again, we make up the highest number of those that's in the working class and lower class community. So we are mostly impacted by these kind of things, rent inflation and eviction. Not too long ago, and I'm going to get to the next two subjects, but not too long ago, there was a protest in California where there was people who were homeless, and they had signs posted up saying that housing is a human right, which it is. It's a human right, and that it doesn't take a rocket science to know that it's a human right to have housing. It does not take a rocket science to know that. But anyways, they was out there protesting. And guess who came through? The Congresswoman herself, Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters came through. And do you know what she told the people? She told the people, go home. They said, well, how can we go home when we don't have a place to go? This is why we out here protesting. That was a slap to their face. It was a total disrespect to them. To have a woman who's supposed to represent the poor, who's supposed to be a black woman herself, tell a group of black people, majority blacks, and other group of people who have nowhere to go, that they need to go home and stop protesting. How does that make sense? Then you want to know why people do not get engaged into voting. People don't feel like it served the purpose, because no matter who you put into office, whether they Democrat or Republican, it's not going to change the situation. I mean, we got a Democrat in office right now as a president, and rent is going up. I mean, he finally decreased the price of gas, but rent is going up, and people are being forced out their home. What that go to show you? It don't matter who's in office, because the situation is not going to really change much. Because at the end of the day, only certain people are going to benefit from a legislation, from the laws that are being passed. Only a certain group of people going to be benefited. You couldn't even get Joe Biden to even speak on the behalf of African Americans, especially after the situation that happened in Buffalo, New York, to get a bill for African Americans. You couldn't even get him to put his focus on reparation. So now what makes us think that he's going to really put his focus on trying to decrease the rent costs? If he didn't put his focus on the police brutality, the hate crime against African Americans, what makes you think he's going to put his focus on reducing rent? Because that's not where his focus is. His focus on other issues that's not even relevant to what's really going on. And don't expect Kamala Harris to do anything, because she ain't gonna do nothing. Just like what you think they gonna do something about Brittany Griner being over there in Russia right now, looking at 9 years over some weed? You think they gonna do something about that? No. He not gonna do anything to get that girl to come back here to America. And if he does, it's gonna take a while. She gonna be waiting for a while. She ain't gonna come back home right away. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we just have to really look at. We have to think about this. This is capitalism. This is what capitalism look like. Rent inflation. And guess who mostly affected by capitalism? People like me and others who are in the minority group. That's who are affected by this the most. People who are in working class, lower class community. That's who affected the most. We don't see the benefits of it. We the last to get something. It's like one thing that Yvette Carnell said, and I can give her some credits, because before she started getting into all this extra stuff, there was one thing she said about the black jelly bean. All the other beans are desirable. They have much flavor to it. They have more value. But that black jelly bean is going to be the last thing that people want to eat. Because if you guys ever ate jelly beans before, you will know that the one jelly bean that you don't like is the black one, because it does not taste that good. So it's like you throw that one away, you discard it, or it just be the last thing you eat. So that's just how it is with us. We're the last people to see anything. We're the last people to see any changes taking place, regardless who is in office. And the people that get the first deal on this is those who are investors, big corporation business owners, and celebrities. They get the first deals. They the first ones to get the help before anybody else. They reap the benefits. They do. So now let me get on to the next subject. Let's talk about what happened out in Houston, Texas. Man, I would say that I was very disgusted when I heard about this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and play this little video clip, and then I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on this.
We begin tonight with a story that you'll only see here on Fox. An employee with Child Protective Services is caught on camera telling a 14-year-old girl in foster care to become a prostitute. And we begin tonight with a story that you'll only see here on Fox. An employee with Child Protective Services is caught on camera telling a 14-year-old girl in foster care to become a prostitute.
That's right, and this girl is one of hundreds of kids in CPS custody living in hotels all over the state. Fox 26's Randy Wallace live from Southwest Houston here with this story. Randy, the exclusive.
Yeah, Jonathan. Now, earlier this year, a federal judge scorned Child Protective Services for making kids available for prostitution in the CPS system. Now we have a case where an employee with that state agency is actually encouraging prostitution of a 14-year-old child.
Don't be a hoe, be a real hoe. Wouldn't they remove a child from a parent that told their child to be a prostitute?
They should. And they would.
Keisha Basley has 9 kids. She turned to Child Protective Services to help her with her 14-year-old daughter, who she says was running away and causing trouble at school.
My daughter told me that the worker had been telling her that she should do these things. So she said she decided to video her.
CPS is housing the girl at a hotel. She's one of dozens in Harris County. In the video, she tells the CPS employee she wants food. The CPS worker tells her to be a prostitute.
I mean, she was basically encouraging a 14-year-old girl to become a prostitute.
And giving her an incentive to do so, and almost a threat of not having her needs being met if she didn't do what this woman very explicitly told her to do.
If the parent, was to do something like this to my child, I would be bashed. I would be called a horrible parent. I will lose my kids.
Basley filed a formal complaint with CPS.
This should not happen to girls in their care. This should not happen. This is unacceptable.
Jamie Masters, the commissioner of CPS, came to Houston to personally apologize to Basley and her daughter.
I've never seen that happen before, where a commissioner of CPS comes in from Austin just to apologize about something that's horrible that's been done to a child and a parent involved with CPS.
I do not believe that that was genuine. I really don't.
It's bad enough if it's one rogue caseworker. It concerns me that it may be bigger than that. And they need to investigate this and make sure that it's not just one person and they've got to figure out a way to protect these kids.
CPS sent us the following prepared statement. DFPS is aware of the video and has taken action. The person in the video, who was employed as CPS support staff, was dismissed from her position August 10th. The safety and appropriateness with which children in care must be treated is our paramount concern. Nothing less will be tolerated. Reporting live from the Southwest side, Randy Wallace, Fox 26.
There's multiple questions that I have regard to that video, to this whole thing. First and foremost, why would the CPS worker tell a 14-year-old child to go and prostitute if she wants something to eat? Isn't your job as a CPS worker to make sure that child's needs are met, to make sure that child is protected? Why would she encourage that to a 14-year-old? And if I was that little girl, I would have told her, well, don't you go out there and prostitute, because obviously you don't need to be a social worker. You don't need to be a worker. If you're telling me to prostitute, won't you go out there and prostitute and give me the money? That's what I would have said if I was that little girl. And then another thing, I have to question the mom. So the mama have 9 kids, right? This is my question. And this is a question that everybody else would have. Where is the father? Where is the dad in this case? This woman got 9 kids, right? And she said her 14-year-old daughter was a runaway. Why, out of all places, would you send your children to CPS? This is the question. Why not send to other relatives who may want her? Why not send her to a grandmother? Why not send her to her aunt? Why not send her to other family members? Why not reach out to them first before you reach out to CPS? And where is the father in this case? That's the most important piece that you're missing. Where is the father? Why the father is not around? Because that's part of one of the reasons why she's just being so rebellious, is because she's lacking father figure in her life. Where is the father? Where is the daddy at? Why the dad is not available? That's the question that I would have to ask. And then she has 9 kids, and you guys sent one away because you say she ran away from home. Then the question is, what's going on at home for this child to constantly run away from home? What is going on? What is happening at home? There's a lot of questions that needs to be asked regarding to the mother, regarding to the child protective service worker, or DFAS as we call it. Where I'm at, we call them DFAS. So there's a lot of questions that has to be asked. What is the home situation like of that mother for that 14-year-old child to constantly run away from home? What is really going on? Is she having trouble in school? Is she being picked on? What is the mother mistreating her? What is the mother not being fair to her? What is going on? Did her father up and leave the family? What is happening? So it's a lot of things that I have to ask about this. But as far as that child protective service worker, yes, she should not only be fired, but she should also have a license taken away. And she do not need to work with kids ever again. Because if you encourage a 14-year-old child to go prostitute, imagine what else you can encourage. Imagine what else happened. Imagine all the other kids that came before her. Imagine all the other kids that she had worked with. How did she treat those other kids? So that ain't the first time she done said something to this little girl. That ain't the first time. Because she probably said this to plenty other little girls out there. Or she probably done mistreat other children out there. So there has to be serious investigation behind this woman, her background, all of that. And all the kids that she don't work with. And somebody need to ask all the employees, that her colleagues, some questions about her so they can do further investigation so they can go up for a possible criminal charge. Okay? Because if you tell a 14-year-old girl to prostitute, what did you do to all the other children that came before you? And somebody needs to investigate on the mama. What is going on in your household for that little girl to keep running away from home and I want to come back home? What's going on? What's taking place? And they need to sit down and ask the little girl, well, what's going on with your mom? What's going on at home? Where's your father? They need to ask mom, where's her daddy? Because the daddy is the most important piece in this picture. This is why you need both parents around. That's just my observation on that. That's my stance on that. But yes, that's terribly wrong and it's disgusting. And it's sad to encourage that to a child, especially a child who don't have much, especially a child who's in desperate need, who's in need of guidance. It's very disheartening to tell a kid to go sell her body. You got babies already out there selling their bodies. It's bad enough that you got kids that are sex trafficking. They are sex trafficking each and every day. And nobody's there to come and save them. Nobody's there to really care for them. And then the sad part about it, us average everyday people that go to work, we won't even know that these children are sex trafficking. That's how serious, that's how deep it is. So you not only encouraging the little girl to go sell her body, but you possibly putting her in a situation where she could end up being a sex trafficking victim. No, I'm not a co-parent. I don't have children of my own. I don't have any children of my own. To answer your question, I have nieces and nephews, but I don't have any children on my own. It's already legal in Las Vegas. Prostitution is legal in Las Vegas right now as we speak. So yes, it is going to be legal in certain places. But when you encouraging, I mean, if you're an adult, if that's what you want to do as an adult, that's a different story. If that's your choice. But when it comes to children, don't encourage that on them. Don't put them in that predicament. Don't ever put them in that predicament. Don't ever encourage, that should be the last thing you should tell a child. Especially if she need guidance. That's the last thing you should ever tell a child, because there's a lot that goes into that lifestyle. That's a lot of major risk. That's a high risk lifestyle to get into. Because you come across all kind of people that you don't even know. You don't know if they serial killers. You don't know if they rapists. You don't even know they're looking to push in the sex trafficking ring. You don't know if they pimps. It's a lot that goes into that lifestyle. Then you're also at risk of catching sexual transmitted disease if you're not wearing protection. She is fired. So they fired her after that. They fired her because once that video got out, they had to remove her. And I'm glad they fired this woman. But they need to do further investigation to find out how many more kids that she has mistreated and how many more kids has she told that to. They need to do further investigation. They need to do a further investigation behind it. And speaking of this whole child trafficking issue, let's go on to the next one. So let's talk about the Young Thug trial, the hearing bond. So Young Thug had a hearing bond today, him and Gunna, and the other host, a member of the YSL crew. So They had a hearing bond today, and once again, he was denied bail. He was denied bail, and his trial date won't come up until January of 2022. What is it? January of 2023. Yeah. So that's when his next trial date. That's his big trial date. Okay. So he's deemed as a threat to society because of allegedly he had put some type of fear or intimidation to witnesses who come forward about him. So they don't want him out of jail. They want to keep him locked up. And all the rest of them got denied bail as well. But this particular young lady that was a part of the situation, right? She was responsible for trafficking children. So the girl's around 24, 25. She was responsible for trafficking kids, and the judge granted her $60,000 in bond and told her that she would be on house arrest, that she is not to be on social media, that she is not to have contact with children under the age of 18, that she is, if she wants to see her kids, that she has to be supervised to see them, and she can only go to doctor's appointment or any other important places and come back home. Now, these are the thoughts that's coming to my mind. What makes them think that that girl's not going to break the law? What makes them think that she's going to follow every rule in the book? Because eventually she's going to break the law. And that's just my observation. Because they being too lenient with her. You giving this girl a house arrest. And you don't think that she's going to get on social media? Or find a way to get on social media? You don't think that she's going to find a way to bend the rules? In my opinion, I think they should have denied her bail too, especially when it comes to trafficking children. But the argument is that she cooperated with the police. Okay, she cooperated with the police, but still, she need to be in jail because that right there, that's a risk in itself. Dealing with children, and you're known for trafficking kids. Who's to say that she's not gonna go back out there doing it again? People want to argue, well, she may not pose threat to the court. That's why they let her go. It don't matter. And that's the problem. When you make some type of assumption, when you make that type of assumption that she's not going to pose a threat on the court. But look at her crime. Look at her case. She was trafficking children. Okay? She was a part of the whole YSL criminal situation, right? But she was known for trafficking kids. So now if she trafficking kids and you let her get away, but everybody else is denied bail, then there's a problem there. Just because she cooperated with the police. But that's the game. See, when you cooperate with the police and you start telling, then they try to cut you some slacks. So when they cut you some slacks, you can pretty much get away with it. They cut this woman some slacks. They cut her some slacks. And her next trial day is in September, around September the 8th or the 23rd, one of those months. And again, this young lady is 24 years old. So you 24 years old, you trafficking kids, you old enough to get locked up. I don't care how much she cooperated with the police. She still need to be in jail. She don't need to be out anytime soon. She need to be in there until her trial date. That's my argument. She should not have no $60,000 bail. And then they was mentioned that the county would pay for her ankle bracelet, but after that she would have to come up with the money to pay for that, because you got to change the battery and all the extra stuff. So she's gonna have to come up with the money to pay for it. Yeah, they did cut her some slack. They cut her some slack because she cooperated with the police. They cut this woman some slack for cooperating with the police. And this is the problem. It's not, this is where the justice system is messed up. This is why it's so corrupted. Certain people can get away with doing heinous crime because they cooperate with the police or cooperate with those in law enforcement. You cooperate with law enforcement, they gonna try to cut you a deal. Then you want to know why people say, well, you know what, I just rather serve my time. Because if they know the risk of cooperating with law enforcement and telling on people. They know that if they start telling and they start saying everything, their life can be put in danger. Their family lives is put in danger. So they said, well, you know what, I'm not even finna go through that because I'm not finna go through threats. I'm not finna go through dealing with somebody looking for me and my family. So what I'm just gonna do is just go ahead and serve my time and just get it over with. That's how some people think. So it's not so much of just showing loyalty to a particular group or organization they belong to, but it's also because they don't want to go through the hassle. They don't want to have to deal with the consequences of telling or testifying against a certain group of people. They don't want to have to deal with those consequences what they gonna have to face, where their family is put in jeopardy. And see, this is what we have to learn. You can't be all tough and be all hardcore and gangster. Then when you sit before the judge, you all humble and scared, and you start folding and telling on everybody. Because see, that's your ultimate test. That's going to see, what are you really about? Are you really what you say you are? That's when the real you starts to reveal. That's your true color coming out. That's going to be your true color coming out. The moment that you start standing before the courts and you start to open your mouth, and when you get on that witness stand, that's when your true color come out. That's going to be, who are you really? Without questioning, who are you really? So it's like when you stand before the lawyers, the prosecutors, and all of that, the defense attorney, and etc., that's going to be, who are you really? Are you really what you say you are? Are you really that loyal? Are you really about that life? Are you willing to take that L? That's when the layers is going to be pulled back. Oh, and they got him for some more charges. Yeah, he got some more charges. There was weapon charges, drug charges along with it. Yeah, they got him some more. They got him for some more of that. This is just the beginning. That's just one person. Best believe somebody else is gonna step forward and testify against him. Best believe that it's gonna be some more. That's just one person. That happened to be a female. There's gonna be some more people testifying. But this is what happens when you indulge into that lifestyle and you got a group of people in your circle who you think that you can trust, who you think is going to be loyal, who's going to be down with you. But when the ultimate test comes, you're going to see if they're going to pass or they're going to fail that test. And then the question becomes, are you really the ringleader, the kingpin, the operator, the CEO? Are you really about that? Are you gonna be, how you gonna respond under pressure? Are you gonna start being like Nikki Barnes, telling on everybody, coming in there with a black face ski mask on and the black suit on and standing at the podium and start telling on everybody? Are you gonna be the Nito Brown? Remember, this is the ultimate test. When you stand before the courts, this is your ultimate test. Yeah, and then let me talk about this whole thing with this nuisance ordinance. So the nuisance ordinance, right, is basically a law that's passed saying that the area where there's too many crimes taking place, whether or businesses where they have too many crimes happening, especially violent crimes, will result to homicide, murder, etc., robberies, etc. Those establishments are going to be held accountable. And not only they going to be held accountable, but they can possibly lose their business. So Killer Mike, 2 Chainz, the owner of Magic City, yeah, and many other, and Young Thug's daddy, they was all at the city hall, standing before the city council, pleading with them, basically saying that this is not right. We should not be, us business owners should not be held accountable because all the violence that's taking place within our establishment or outside our establishment. We don't have any type of responsibility over that. We have no control over that. That's going to affect us if you pass down this law. Now, I can understand seeing how they feel about the situation and how it could affect them. But at the same time, this is what I'm looking at. Especially if you have a club or a bar establishment, there's greater chance that crime is going to take place. That's where you need to make sure you have insurance. And you need to be able to make sure that you got your lawyers or whatever the case may be, because more than likely crime is going to happen in those establishments. And then Killer Mike brought up the situation about Lennox Mall and all of that. Yes, there's crimes constantly happening at Lennox Mall. And Lennox Mall is going to deal with the same fate if they don't do anything to upgrade on security. They're going to eventually, people are going to stop going to Lennox Mall and going to go elsewhere because they feel like their safety is not being a top priority or a concern to their establishment. So they're going to go where they can feel a lot more secured and they can be able to shop and go on about their day. So eventually, Lennox Mall is going to meet its fate right now because it's so popular and they have a lot of extravagant stores and foreign name brands, etc. People shopping there. But eventually, people are not going to shop there anymore if it keeps continuing to be the way it is. But let's talk about this with the businesses. The businesses is especially like the clubs and the bars. So Magic City Club, by that being a strip club, right? You got all kind of people coming in and out that club. And you got security guards who may have a good relationship with certain individuals, especially those who involved into the criminal lifestyle. They can come in there with drugs. They can come in there with weapons. So by the owner of Magic City, nobody can sit here and tell me that he doesn't know what be going on in his club, because he knows what's going on majority of the time. But the only thing is he tried to, this is just my observation, he brushing it under the rug because he don't want to lose reputation and he don't want to lose clientele. Because Magic City is a very popular club in Atlanta and it has a nationwide and international recognition. So when you got so many things happening there and you try to brush it on the rug, of course you're going to do that because you don't want to lose clientele. You don't want to lose that recognition. And that's the case with the club owner. He don't want to lose none of that. So if you don't upgrade on your security, right, and you don't make sure the people that's in the environment is safe, where they can be able to come in and then, join the entertainment, whatever, and then go home, then eventually you're going to go out of business because they're going to find somewhere else to go. If you got crime happening every other night, Will somebody come up in there shooting up the club, or somebody's in the parking lot area, at the end of the day, that's still part of your establishment. So it may not happen inside of your establishment, but if it's happening in the parking lot in front of your establishment, right there in your establishment area, you're responsible for that. That's still your establishment. See, what they don't understand is, what they're not looking at is, not only you're going to be dealing with criminal cases where there's instances where somebody getting killed, or somebody done got raped or robbed or something. Not only that's a criminal case, but there's also a lawsuit against your establishment. That's a lawsuit, and that's a fine that you got to pay. That is a lawsuit, because that's called a liability. So those people are a liability at your establishment. So anything that goes wrong with them inside your establishment, or at that area, or on the ground of where your establishment is at, that they become a liability. That means they 9 times out of 10, if something happened to them, whether they get killed, they get robbed, or they get raped, they can file a lawsuit against you. They can file a lawsuit against your company. They can go up for a lawsuit. And that's what people do not understand. That's the part about running a business, especially if you're running a bar and a club. You are more than likely going to face a lawsuit. So not only you're going to deal with criminal cases, but you're also going to deal with lawsuit, because the family is going to sue for the loss of their loved ones, or what happened to their loved ones at your establishment. So while they getting upset about the nuances ordinance taking place, they also need to figure out, well, okay, what can we do to upgrade our security to make sure that people can feel a lot safe, so that way we won't lose clientele and we won't lose recognition. They not thinking about, well, what can we do to make these things more applicable, right? To where people can come and enjoy the environment they're in and go on about their night. So especially if you have workers working at your establishment, they can't come to work because they worrying about what's going to happen next. So if you got strippers at Magic City, they come in there trying to strip, get their money, and get gone. They may not feel comfortable coming in there stripping, because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if that person is going to bring some more people to come back up in that club and start shooting again, or start drugging people, or start raping somebody, or whatever. This is what people have to understand. You can't just think because you got an establishment that, oh, you're not going to be held accountable. You are. And so even the same way with the gas station. Yeah, if there's crime happening at the gas station, right, and you don't have some type of security going on, where you don't have cameras there, or you don't have the security guard or policeman that's watching that area to make sure that, you know, people can go in there and pump their gas and get out of there. If you're not making sure of that, then you don't need to run that type of establishment. Because if you got crime happening every night at your area, then you don't need to run that establishment. So same way for a club and a bar. If you got crime taking place every single night where somebody's getting shot and killed, or getting raped or something, or getting drugged out, you don't need to run that establishment, because that means that you can't maintain control. You can't enforce the rules there. So I see where city council is coming from on their end, because they're trying to do whatever they can to reduce the crimes that's happening in the city of Atlanta. They're doing whatever they can. But then I understand that it's going to affect business owners too. But what business owners got to understand is safety is the top priority. If you can't make safety a priority at your establishment to where you can upgrade on security, then you're going to face all kind of fines. You're going to face lawsuits, and you're going to face all kind of criminal investigation. And you're going to eventually lose reputation, and you're going to lose clientele, and people are going to go elsewhere to enjoy their entertainment. Bottom line. But anyway, that's all I had to say for today on these subjects. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Thank you guys for supporting my channel. So make sure you like my channel, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. And Check out all the other videos that I have done previously. Okay. So again, I hope you guys got something out of it. And until next time, y'all take it easy on yourself. Y'all be safe and be careful out here in these streets or wherever you at, because tomorrow ain't promised to us all. So peace and power elevation be to all of you. Until next time, this your girl Tiffany. I'm logging off saying deuces. Thank you.